All right, everyone, let's go ahead and get started. I am Catherine Bazan. I'm a member of East Dallas Greater Good. We're a community of 1,800 East Dallas residents who have joined together to champion quality of life issues for our neighborhood. This is our first ever community meeting, and our topic today is the I-635 LBJ East Project. And our discussion will center around potential environmental and quality of life issues that this project could potentially bring to our community. The purpose of this meeting is to create a collaborative and open dialogue between project leaders of the 635 East project, our neighbors. So tonight we are going to hear from our local elected officials, TxDOT's subcontractor Pegasus Link Constructors, as well as the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality. I'm making some introductions, and I'll start with myself. I am a resident of Eastwood, and I live here with my husband and my 2 children. Environmentalist by profession, and my experience includes managing environmental programs at the municipal level and also with environmental regulatory compliance assistance with the TCEQ's Small Business and Local Government Assistance Program. The other members of our Greater Good core group consist of Maricela Martinez, Kendra Nichols, and Kirsten Swanson. And I do want to say a very quick congratulations to Kristen and her husband, Peter. They just welcomed the cutest new member of our East Dallas community, and we're very excited for her and her family. I do also want to say we're joined tonight by one of our project leaders, Mark Fuentes. And next, we will hear from our state representative, Victoria Niave, who was instrumental in setting this meeting up. So to her and to her, especially David Leo, we are very grateful. We'll also hear from our Regional Transportation Vice Chair and Dallas County Dr. Teresa Daniel. Dr. Daniel champions air quality issues at the county level, and so we look forward to hearing that perspective. We'll also hear from from District 9's own City Councilwoman Paula Blackman, who has supported us and our efforts. She's made sure that our voices have been heard as a community, and she's been generous with her time to discuss these important issues. Next, we'll hear from Dio with the Pegasus Link Constructors. She's a public information officer, and with her is Steve Funderburg, the environmental compliance manager. Then we hear from the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality staff, including Beryl Thatcher, who is the Assistant Director of the Air Permits Division in Austin. And one of my former colleagues, Taylor, who's the Regional Director of Region 4 DFW for the TCEQ. And then we're going to wrap it up with Q&A. If you submitted your questions via our Google form in advance, we're going to go ahead and address those questions first. Because we did so many questions, we're going to link to our Google form and in the chat section. If we have additional questions, please put them there, and what we'll do is follow up with the that's most appropriate, and then we'll follow up back with you directly to make sure that you get an answer to your question. Last thing is we are going to post all of our Q&A on our website, eastdallasgreater.org, after the holiday break, so look for that. And last, I would like to say that we're grateful to each of you, all of our panelists, for taking out of your evening to join us. We know that you all have your colleagues on the line to support you, and so we're grateful for their time as well. And we just want to say how great our community has been staying engaged on this issue and for their willingness to see it through. In our discussions leading to this meeting, I've said many times that when you're hearing us voice our concerns about projects or things that are coming into our neighborhood, it's only because we love our communities and we want to to be a healthy place for us to raise our families and to grow. And so what we really wanted to do was to create the opportunity for us to hear one another. We want to be solutions oriented when we're talking about these potential issues. And what we hope is that this is the beginning of a partnership, that we can see this regional transportation succeed and mitigate negative impacts with collaborative solutions. So as a community, we are here to do the work. And we want to ensure that when we're talking about negative impacts to air quality, we're not asking one socioeconomic group or demographic to shoulder that burden exclusively. We want to make sure that we're protecting our most vulnerable neighbors, excuse me. And so with that in mind, let's get started. I would like to introduce Representative Victoria Miave. She is a member of the Texas House of Representatives, and her encompasses the project of East Dallas, Garland, and Mesquite. Welcome, Representative.
Thank you so much, Catherine. I just want to thank you, Maricela, the whole team, and just all of the members of the organization, East Dallas Greater Good, for everything that y'all have been doing to organize and to raise your voices during a lot of the changes that we're seeing over here in East Dallas and the eastern side of the county. Your voices are so important, and I want to just ask you to continue to reach out to us. We're grateful for the partnership, and I really think that democracy is best served when our community's voices are being heard loud and clear. And so I'm honored to join y'all alongside Councilwoman Paula Blackman, who I also thank for all of the great work that she's done in our area, as well as Commissioner Dr. Daniel. And I want to thank TxDOT and TCEQ as well for helping us facilitate this meeting so that our community can raise their voices and also to listen to the latest updates with 635. I just want to give y'all some quick background. Just so a few years ago, the 635 project is a project that has been in the works for years. We know that our population is growing, and the traffic congestion on 635, once you've sat there for a long time, can disrupt a family's, somebody getting home so that they can spend time with their child, or running big 18-wheelers through to the manufacturers that a lot of them are housed in the Garland part of the district. So I represent part of East Dallas. There are several legislators that represent different parts. I represent part of Lakewood, part of Lockwood, part of Grass Avenue, part of Old Lake Highlands, and part of 635, part of South Garland along 635, and a big chunk of Mesquite. And so the 635 project is something that is very, very important to our community. At the same time, we have to make sure that we balance the health and safety of our residents, of the children in our community and our schools, to make sure that air quality is not diminished. Earlier this year, I requested a hearing from the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality because of an air permit that we learned about on the Garland side, and relating to a project over there. We had and I want to thank any of you who participated in that hearing. A few months ago, we heard from the community, and TCEQ heard from the community with respect to what's going on over there on that part of the district. And so there are different mechanisms in place. And so again, we ask you, do not hesitate to reach out to us. There are different mechanisms in place for our community to give public comment to TCEQ or TxDOT or other agencies whenever there are projects like this. But I know that for us, we want to make sure that while this project is being built, that the regional mobility issues are being addressed, that our community's health and safety is prioritized. And so I'm here to listen to the community, also to hear from TxDOT on the latest reports that they have. But we just want you to know that we're here as a resource during the COVID pandemic. Our office has been highly focused on helping our constituents, many of whom are out of work. We want to make sure that folks are able to put food on the table, keep a roof over their heads. We're helping families, continue to help families navigate the unemployment process. So if you know of anybody that needs help in our community with respect to the COVID pandemic or needs assistance or resources, please connect them with us or reach out to me directly. We're all over social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Snapchat. And so I won't take much of the time here, but I just wanted to offer our services, and thank you for everything that y'all are doing.
Thank you so much, Representative. And now we are going to hear from Dr. Daniel, who is our District 1 Dallas County Commissioner and also the Regional Transportation Vice Chair. Her district encompasses most, if not all, of the district area. And as I mentioned, she works on numerous air quality initiatives at the county. Welcome, Dr. Daniel.
Well, thank you very much. And I'd like to echo many things that the good representative had to say, because I too was very heartened when this particular group got together, organized itself, and was successful in addressing the cement batch plant issues that happened on Garland Road, because it is something that in fact does impact a lot of people. People say, well, why would I be involved as a county commissioner? And that's on a couple of different levels. Obviously, we don't do zoning, but we do the public health aspect of what we're talking about here, as well as I'm very involved with the transportation. And it is true that my district goes from Richardson down to I-20, then Mesquite over to Oak Lawn, but does include almost the whole stretch of 635 from 75 down to 30. And there's a lot of activity obviously going on. And it's fun to see that finally there is the sound walls are going up and there's a lot of work being done. I had some concerns recently about with so much instability or just shaking around between COVID and a variety of other things, how stable funding was going to be for some of these projects. So I asked Bill Hale of TxDOT his opinion about that. And he said, for example, that these projects that are on the books and that are on the books for probably the next 4 years are safe, and that the monies are there and dedicated, which gave me a little bit of confidence on what we're trying to do here on 635. Also, as a member of the Regional Transportation Council, there is an intent to look at a little bit bigger scope on some of these things. And so just to see how things fit together. And fortunately, representing both sides of 635 almost the whole way on the eastern part, I do get the chance to do that. Lastly, did want to mention about the clean air and just the environmental impact of the things that we're doing. We're all aware that just on the other side of 635 in Garland, that a similar type of facility that was stopped on Garland Road was allowed to continue. And that's, so it's something obviously to be very attentive to and to monitor, because what happens there, in fact, does impact what happens to us on the southern part of 635. Lastly, there is a lot going on in our worlds right now, a lot going on my plate. COVID, due to the healthcare aspects of it and the testing and the tracing and the variety of aspects, the impacts on individuals and families and kids is huge. I'm now officing out of my Road and Bridge office, which is in Garland, just off of I-30 and 635. And am always available. The doors open, willing always to listen to see what's going on and to see what can we be doing as far as next steps to address a variety of things. So once again, thank you so much for all that the East Dallas Greater Good is doing, for the partnership among elected officials. So good to see Representative Naive as well as Paula Blackman, because there's a willingness among people right now to come together and to see what we can do to by leveraging all of our resources to have a better outcome come out of this. So thank you very much for allowing me just a minute to talk about some of these things. And now I'm looking forward to listening and to hearing what TxDOT and TCEQ have to say, as well as all of my neighbors in the area here. So thank you very much, Catherine, for bringing this all together.
Thanks, Dr. Daniel. Next, we are going to hear from Diane Tordillo, who's the Public Information Officer at Pegasus Link Constructors, to hear a project overview, and also Steve Funderburg, who's going to discuss the environmental aspects of the LBJ East project. Welcome to you both.
So thank you so much for having us tonight. Again, allowing us to kick off this presentation agenda for this evening. We do appreciate the East Dallas Greater Good team, Catherine, Maricela, for allowing us to have this opportunity, this platform to share about our project and just a brief overview of what's going on along 635, as well as how we as a project team are committed to minimizing impacts from construction, whether it be from a construction standpoint, an environmental standpoint, impacts to the public in general. And we also look forward to sharing a little bit of our project team and our business operations. We do have several team members that will be present during the panelist portion of this, both from TxDOT and Pegasus Link Constructors, that would be able to help answer some of those questions that the community submitted. So but first, I'm going to go ahead and kick off our presentation just with a brief project overview, and then pass the baton over to Steve Funderburg for a little bit of our environmental program. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. Starting off with our project limits. The 635 East project is 11 miles long, spans 3 cities, Dallas, Garland, and Mesquite, between US Highway 75 all the way to I-30. There's actually a 2-mile section of I-30 included as part of this project, and that 2-mile section is between West Thomason to Northwest Drive on I-30, and that's to accommodate the full reconstruction of the direct connectors at the I-30 and I-635 interchange. Next up, going into a little bit more of our the changes happening along the project. These diagrams provide a really great before and after depiction of comparing what's out there right now versus the width of the roadway when construction is complete. So as you can see, there are so many new lanes that will be added to the project as construction continues. And this before section, or this before picture at the top there shows a little bit of what's out there right now. The existing lanes along the main lanes, it shows there's not really frontage roads. There's a lot of sections along 635 that don't have these connections, so we're going to be adding continuous frontage roads as part of this project. On the top, also on the top graphic there, the middle lanes are where the HOV express lanes used to be. We actually permanently closed these lanes earlier in the project. Closed in April. There will not be express lanes in service throughout the duration of construction. And so that allowed us a little bit more room to shift the traffic inward as we begin construction on the outer lanes where the frontage roads will be. So when the center lanes come back into service after construction, they will actually be managed lanes. And so just like the TxPress lanes we see on the west side of US Highway 75, that'll be continuing on east towards Mesquite. The bottom graphic just goes into just the more changes, more lanes that we're adding. It's going to turn the existing 4 main lanes in each direction to 5 main lanes in each direction. And we mentioned the continuous frontage roads. The managed lanes that will come back will still be 1 lane in each direction, but with an added shoulder, and they'll be separated by a concrete barrier between the general purpose lanes and the managed lanes. In addition to just the previously stated changes, we'll also be reconstructing the city streets that intersect 635 within those 11 miles, the underpasses and overpasses along the project itself. So this slide goes through, why we need this project and how are we addressing those reasons. Congestion relief, we've already talked about adding more lanes to accommodate those higher traffic volumes, and adding more lanes along cross streets as well. So it's not only providing improvements to traffic flow on the main lanes, but also in local streets as well. increasing aerial mobility and local connectivity. Those continuous frontage roads will be really key to just the mobility in the area, and the fact that we're also making improvements on cross streets, that's also key to access the different businesses and the communities along the corridor. Improving safety and providing reliable travel time. You know, this project will add so many new mobility options. You know, you can take the main lanes or you can take the frontage roads, and it's just providing those options. If you're traveling 1 mile or 2 miles down the road, you don't even have to use the main lanes if you don't want to. And if you're traveling longer distances, you know, you can take those managed lanes, traveling from the west end of the project all the way to the east end. This just shows the project, just a project overview and a project team. The 635 East project will cost $1.7 billion to build using the design and build method, which means that we're designing and building the project simultaneously. Timeframe for construction began this year, and it's going to continue through the end of 2024. PLC was awarded the project by TxDOT last May, and we executed our contract with TxDOT in August 2019. And so once we were given that notice to proceed, we started the design process in September. To the right, the project team, that's just the basic structure of our project team. Of course, TxDOT as the owner, and PLC, which is made up of Fluor and Balfour Beatty. This joint venture between the companies has been longstanding. Our joint venture team has had numerous projects together, and they're working and operating as one company. These are just some examples of the different projects that the Fluor Balfour joint venture has worked on. There's, you know, the Southern Gateway in South Dallas, which is still going on through late 2021. We have the Horseshoe project in downtown Dallas, which was completed a few years ago. And in Austin, we have that 183 South, and TxDOT recently awarded us the Oak Hill Parkway project in Austin. And so, as you can see, we've had these numerous design build projects. Our team has had a history of you know, delivering these design build projects for nearly 2 decades, and so the values that are found in each and every one of these projects really remain consistent. The values that we uphold, whether it be safety, you know, completing the project on time, within budget, within environmental regulations, community relations, business diversity. That's all consistent within each and every one of these projects, and that's what we just uphold. So. Next up, we have the project schedule. This just provides a really high-level overview of our project schedule, and we kind of touched on that a little bit earlier. It just shows that we executed our contract with TxDOT August of last year. Got that notice to proceed in September, which kicked off our design phase. In the first half of the project, we were getting utility relocations out the way, which is where we're at on the project. If you can see here, we're at Q3 2020, so you can see that the design phase, utilities, and we're well into construction as well. And of course, substantial completion for the project will be late 2024. So this just shows just the construction progress that we've accomplished this year, just a snapshot of what has happened along the project. In April, as mentioned earlier, we permanently closed the HOV express lanes along 635. Beginning in May, we began removing large signs, of course, along those HOV express lanes, since they won't be in service during construction. The signs associated along those lanes were gradually removed, and we actually continue doing that through August, as well as restriping the main lanes. In June, we also closed long-term the I-30 HOV lanes. And the difference with these HOV lanes is that whenever they open back up or after construction, they will remain HOV lanes on I-30. So they're not going to be any different than what they were before prior to closing. We also started installing bridge foundations for the brand new direct connectors near the I-30 and 635 interchange. In June, July, we had our very first bridge demo at Galloway, which is actually the image in the middle there that you see in the nighttime where we were taking down part of that bridge at Galloway at I-30. And in August, we also closed some ramps at Northwest Drive, which we performed outreach as well in regards to that. So with these major closures, we typically perform some outreach and let our stakeholders know that, hey, this is happening. For that bridge demo operation in July, there were about 8 detours associated with that operation, in which we went through those detours and saw which businesses or properties are actually affected. And we contacted them, communicated with them about the plans for that, and got them in our database. So we're constantly interested in communicating about these upcoming changes along the roadway. And that's our commitment throughout the project duration. Over to the right is just, we wanted to highlight some of the major construction dates that's happening during our project. Because we are constructing brand new frontage roads and fully reconstructing those intersecting cross streets along 635, there will be some temporary impacts. And with these, believe it or not, it would probably impact more if we didn't close these, because you see here, these are long-term closures, and in a lot of these, we're doing so for safety, to keep traffic out of work zones, and the corridor is really full of businesses and residents and a lot of traffic. So if we didn't have to, we won't, but also we're also trying to maintain that safety and uphold the schedule as well for this project. So and so on the very top there, we have the Skillman Street temporary bridge. Along Skillman itself, we are actually going to be reconstructing that intersection, and it's a very complex operation because it's also associated with an aesthetic bridge. And so in addition to that, the surrounding cross streets will also be under construction. Driving through there, there's these curves and turns, narrow turns along the surrounding cross streets at Skillman. So as part of our project, we'll actually be straightening that out. And with all that, all the associated construction for that, it's just really complex. So we are actually building a temporary bridge to the west side of the Skillman Street bridge. And so we're going to be closing that intersection and building the temporary bridge to the west of that to maintain through traffic through the intersection, so people can still travel through the north and south sides of Skillman. And so we are beginning construction on that temporary bridge, targeting the end of September this month, installing the drill shafts, the bridge foundations for that temporary bridge, and it's going to continue the next couple of months. We're also going to be doing a long-term closure of this Thomason Road at I-30. That's targeted for 2021, lasting 9 months. With Gus Thomason, we're actually currently, the bridge goes over, it's an overpass at I-30. And then as part of our project, we're switching that, and it's going to be an underpass eventually. And the main lanes of I-30 will actually go over that intersection. Also, the on-ramp at Skillman, so that's just part of all the construction at Skillman. That's also going to be affected long-term, about a year or so. The eastbound I-635 exit to Greenville, also a year in 2022, and the long-term closure of La Prada at 635 in 2022. That's just kind of a snapshot of just the major construction activities that are part of this project for the next few years. And after hearing all that, you may be wondering, how do I keep up with all these changes that's about to happen along 635? And I wanted to go over just our website. Our website is definitely a great central location for everything this project related information. All of our closures that are approved, as soon as they get approved, they actually get posted on the website. So that's the closures tab that you see here. But we also provide opportunity to distribute information via e-blast and text alerts. And so I'm glad that you see the layout of our website on the screen. The receipt tab, it is an actual online form for you to sign up for either text alerts or e-blasts. And then, if we have an event or anything like that, that kind of information gets distributed through those platforms as well. And so we actually had a few events planned this year, in-person events to kick off construction, but with COVID, that kind of took a toll on our plans for an open house and just a project kickoff. But we are discussing other other events that we can have just to carry that through, and just a business task force and a virtual presentation, just updating the project for the next few months, stuff like that. So whenever we do get this on the schedule, it will be posted on our website under the view tab and upcoming events. So we will be distributing that once those plans are more solidified. And then the next final slide is just communication about communications tools that we use and try to circulate to the public. And these are just great ways for to stay connected with us. The top left address there, that's our project storefront. And you know, without COVID, typically we you know, encourage people to visit, and if they have any questions, they can come to the storefront and pick up some brochures, ask questions to our project team. We welcome that. But these days, it's not really in place at the moment, but we also have our email and our hotline available to the public if they have any questions. We have a team constantly monitoring those lines. And of course, social media. And then the final is just the manual way to subscribe to our text alerts. And of course, at any time, people can also reach out to me and Lisa Watzel. We are the public information officers for the project. Anything project related, we're here to help. You know, it's a highly visible project lasting several years. So we do encourage, you know, it's very understandable that questions will pop up. And so we definitely want to help out with getting information out, accurate information about the project, and just clarifying anything that may be needed. So with that, I'd like to pass on.
So Diane, thank you so much for that. In the interest of time, we're going to go ahead and switch over to our presentation from the TCEQ.
Okay.
And then we'll follow up with you guys with some questions and answers.
Okay.
Just so that our participants know, there's a link in the chat form to submit your questions to our Google Forms. So if we do not get to your question today, we're going to follow up with the most appropriate entity and then get a response back to you. So now we're going to hear from the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality, and we'll start with Beryl Thatcher, who is with Austin's Air Permits Division. She's going to give an overview of the air permitting process for batch plants, and then we'll follow with Alyssa Taylor, who's the Regional Director for Region 4 DFW, who's going to discuss regional enforcement initiatives. Welcome to you both.
Thank you, Catherine. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, good. Like you said, my name is Beryl Thatcher. I'm the Assistant Division Director in the Air Permits Division. With the TCEQ, what we do is we process, review, and issue air permits basically to any facility in the state of Texas that has an air contaminant that's going to get emitted. It's going to need some sort of air authorization. I mean, everybody on this call actually has an air permit that you don't even know about for your hot water heater that's in your house. So we have air permits for everything that emits an air contaminant. And there are a variety of permits that can be issued to facilities depending on the operations and the amount of emissions that they have. So that's just in general for all air permits. For concrete batch plants, and specifically, they do have air emissions such as engines, silos that they store things in, stockpiles, and some fugitives from the things that are running. And all of those are the types of emission sources that would need an air authorization. There are two types of permits that can authorize a concrete batch plant in Texas. The one that's most typically used is going to be the concrete batch plant standard permit. There's also another one that's a case-by-case permit is what we call it, that's more site-specific. But the standard permit is actually an air permit that was developed by the TCEQ for a typical concrete batch plant that's going to be operating in the state of Texas. So we took a look at what is a typical operation of one of these plants around the state, what's the typical production, the hours that they would operate, the amount of equipment that they would have, and we developed a permit for them that they could actually apply to operate under that standard permit. And when we developed that permit, we put specific requirements and specific restrictions in there, such as throughput, how much could be produced, and what types of equipment would be there. And we We developed it in order for it to be protective of human health and the environment at the property line, no matter where it is in the state of Texas. So companies who apply for that standard permit must be able to meet all the requirements, such as those production rates, such as a setback requirement. If we said you had to be so many feet from a property line, they would actually have to meet all of those requirements exactly in order to qualify for that standard permit. So if they don't meet just one of them, or if there's a requirement for 100 feet away from the property line and they were only 99 feet away from the property line, we would not be able to give them that permit because they didn't meet those requirements. So that's just a real broad general overview of the type of permit that's typically issued for concrete batch plants in Texas. That's what we see it predominantly is the one that most facilities use. Usually someone will get a site-specific permit if they're in a different location, if they want to have more production than what's allowed by the standard permit. That's usually when we're going to see somebody not get the standard permit. The standard permit authorizes both temporary and permanent plants. So there's certain requirements in the standard permit that applies to every concrete batch plant, no matter which type you are. But then there's also some different requirements if you're temporary or permanent. The difference between a temporary and a permanent is a temporary plant is limited to be on site for no more than 180 days or completion of a single project. And so for most of the TxDOT projects, they last longer than 180 days. But if it's being worked for one single project, it can be longer than 180 days and still be considered a temporary plant. The standard permit does have public participation. So whenever we get an application, we review it to make sure that it's technically complete, make sure that they're going to meet all the requirements that they represent, that they can meet all the requirements of the standard permit. This includes reviewing plot plans and site maps, representations of the equipment and how they're going to be operating. Once we deem it technically complete and determine that they will be able to meet the standard permit the way they've represented it, then they have to publish a notice in the newspaper. And that in that notice, there is an opportunity for the public to submit public comments on that application. They could request a public meeting to discuss that application, or they could, they could request a contested case hearing. And that's basically the difference between a public meeting and a contested case hearing. Is a public meeting is something is something similar to what we're doing right now. Q&A at the beginning, and then an opportunity to provide formal comments. A contested case hearing is actually something that if somebody asked for it and the commissioners granted it, it would go through the State Office of Administrative Hearings. There is an exception though for public participation for temporary plants and for public work projects. So a temporary plant would not require public notice if they were moving to a site that had public notice in the last 2 years. So we do see that on occasion. Also for a public works project, if there is a plant that's being used for a public works project, they do not require public notice, and that's per state statute. There is actually a state statute that says if you're doing one of these for a public works project, you're not required to do public notice. Excuse me. So that's just a really quick overview of the public participation process for concrete batch plants. I did see a question pop up in the chat really quick that I'll answer. It's asked about PBRs, permit by rules. We do have permit by rules. We do not have a permit by rule for a concrete batch plant. There is our permits by rule, and I'll just go over those really quick. It's permits that are in our rules that basically you are permitted by rule. If you meet it, it's as, like I said, the hot water heater. There is a one-liner hot water heater permit by rule in our state rules that say a residential hot water heater is permitted by rule. So basically you don't have to apply to the TCEQ for that. So we do have some permit by rules that require registration. We have some permit by rules that do not, that you just have to meet the requirements and maybe keep records or things like that. There is not a permit by rule for a concrete batch plant anymore. There was probably 20 years ago, but there is not anymore. There are some facility types that could get a permit by rule at a concrete batch plant. For example, if there was an engine, an emergency engine that they needed to bring on site, they could get that by a permit by rule. But typically everything that's done at a concrete batch plant is going to be authorized in their standard permit. So hopefully that answered that question. The last thing I wanted to mention is that the TCEQ does not have jurisdiction to really dictate where a concrete batch plant can be located in the state. If the plant meets the state and federal requirements, then we will issue the permit. Like I said, if they represent that they would meet the standard permit, we'll be able to issue the permit. Now, issuance of an air permit from the TCEQ does not exclude them from getting any other local permit that might be required. It doesn't exclude them from any zoning requirements. It doesn't exclude them from any city or local ordinances. They still have to follow all of those, even if they get the TCEQ air permit. So I just wanted to throw that out there also, because we do get that question a lot. If the TCEQ permit means they don't have to do anything else, and that's not, the TCEQ permit is just one piece of the puzzle for them. So that was just a really quick air permitting overview, and I'll be happy to answer any questions at the end, and I will turn it over to Alyssa.
Okay, good evening. Can you hear me? Okay. I am Alyssa Taylor, the Regional Director for the DFW region of the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality, or TCEQ. The TCEQ is the state's environmental regulatory agency and is comprised of our central office in Austin and 16 regional offices, including DFW. The DFW regional office is responsible for investigating compliance at permitted and registered air, water, and waste facilities located across the DFW area, and complaints at facilities and operations, permitted or not, from citizens, businesses, or other concerned parties. TCEQ investigations are scheduled based on multiple factors, which may include the nature of the operations, facility location, compliance history, previous investigation history, complaint history, and other factors that may be required by statute, rule, or policy. If a facility has a documented history of continued noncompliance, regularly scheduled or reconnaissance investigations may be initiated. Investigations at concrete batch plants are more often initiated by complaints and can be investigated at any time, but they are not on a set schedule for compliance investigations. All complaints received by the regional office are evaluated to determine if the issue falls within TCEQ jurisdiction. Complaints are assigned a priority or may be referred to another entity if outside TCEQ's jurisdiction. In most cases, an unannounced on-site investigation is conducted to evaluate compliance with environmental regulations. If the operation is found to be out of compliance with the terms and conditions of the permit or applicable TCEQ regulations, any violations will be handled as appropriate, and if applicable, the company may be subject to an enforcement action. Some issues that are commonly reported fall outside of the jurisdiction of the TCEQ. For example, authority over traffic and safety on public roads, including any load-bearing restrictions, access, and speed limits are typically the responsibility of local, county, or other state agencies. Any traffic concerns may be addressed by local officials or otherwise limited by local ordinances, and noise and light pollution concerns may be addressed by local ordinances as well. For locations within the city limits of Dallas, the City of Dallas Local Air Program is contracted by the TCEQ to conduct compliance and complaint investigations related to air quality. TCEQ contracted local air programs receive state and federal funds to implement air investigation programs within their jurisdiction. The TCEQ is charged with the responsibility of oversight of the local air program, ensuring that state and federal funds are used appropriately and that the implementation of air programs is consistent with all applicable TCEQ policies and procedures. Thank you, and TCEQ staff are available to answer questions.
Thank you so much, Alyssa. Thank you, Beryl. So now we are going to head over to hear from D9's City Councilwoman Paula Blackman to wrap up the meeting with her comments before we take some Q&A. Welcome, Councilwoman.
Hello, and I think all of a sudden the cicadas just like started going up. So, so it was like, oh my gosh! Now, but is there any background noise? Is it okay?
A little, but it's okay. Yeah, it's okay.
So, hi, thank you for organizing this. It's kind of nice to see you all virtually again. Someday we'll get together, but it was an interesting situation back in June and in May that brought us all together, and I am so happy that the outcome was what it was. Y'all did a great job organizing and staying organized, and I just want to say thank you. But you know, the city did pass the CCAP, and we're funding it to get the items moving along, and so it's not going to be a plan that sits on the shelf. And this council that you have now is very, very committed to environmental issues, to clean water, clean air, alternative modes of transportation, and everything that goes with that's in that document. So, and that does include, things like cleaning up Shingle Mountain. And so it's on everybody's list, and everybody is watching it as it moves through litigation. So I know that I'm sure everybody's excited and wanting to get to Q&A, and they're starting to chime back up. So why don't we just hit that running now?
They're singing you a song this evening. Okay.
My kid is inside because they're doing an open house to get ready for school on Tuesday. So it's a crazy, it's just, you make it work.
Yes. I sent mine out with my husband for ice cream. So they're going to come back all really hopped up here in about 15 minutes. And it's also their bedtime. So that'll be. So now I'm going to pass it over to Mark. Mark is going to start some of our Q&A. Mark, I'm going to toss it over to you, but I want to make sure that Pegasus Link is back on the line and they can hear us before we start with them. So let's check in with them first. And if they're not on the line, let's go ahead and address a question for someone else and get them back on.
Yeah, for sure, Catherine. So we have a lot of questions. Hopefully we could get to as many as possible before we end the night. Diane, are you guys available? Can you unmute and see if you're available to take a couple of questions, and we'll start with you guys first?
Sure. Can you hear us okay?
Yes.
I can. Perfect. All right. So we've, like I said, we had a lot of questions that came in before the call, and then we had a couple that filtered through the chat. So we're going to try to run through these and see if we can get as much information as possible, and hopefully this is a productive Q&A. So first one to you, Diane, is one from a local neighbor stating, I'm concerned about the proximity to residential properties for the location that was proposed for the batch plant in Dallas and the approved location for the batch plant in Garland. Where are any additional plants to support this project being proposed, and how far are they from residential properties?
So I'm actually here with our construction director who would like to answer that.
Hi guys, this is Shad Gardner. I'm the director of construction here for the LBJ East Project, and I think I'm probably best suited to field these questions. So the response to that is, for this 11-mile long project, we have 3 staging yards planned for the project. We have one on the north end in Dallas by High-5. It's an existing TxDOT property that was used previously on past projects. And then we have our current site at the old Hypermart location in Garland, off of Garland Road. And then the third location is will be in Mesquite, near Galloway and Northwest Drive. All 3 of those locations, we're currently anticipating a batch plant in each one of those locations, considering that we have over 1 million yards of concrete to build this highway, and the time limits that we have associated with concrete. So from the time we batch it, we have 45 minutes to put it on the ground. So the need for having suitable batch plants close to our project is key to success.
Perfect, thank you. So the follow-up question to that was, is it assumed that the materials to supply the LBJ East project, is that where these 3 locations where the materials are going to come from?
Well, that would be the concrete. The materials for the concrete come from off-site sources. They're transported to our project. So for example, the sand for the concrete, it comes from South Dallas, trucked to the site. The aggregates come from Bridgeport, Chico, Texas area, and they're transported to the site. The asphalt for the paving is batched off-site at existing plants. There's no plan for an asphalt plant anywhere near the project.
Got it. Okay. And I'd seen this in the last couple of slides of your presentation, and I assume this is where we get this information, but some of the local neighborhoods were wondering how they stay engaged about the plans for the project. and how to be kept in the loop for the progress of the project plan. You had a couple of slides in your presentation. Is that where we can find the information of where to be kept up to speed on the project?
That's correct, Mark. We do have our website, of course, that's continuously updated, but we also send out e-blasts and text alerts. And those sign-up forms can be found on our website as well under the Receive tab. So we do encourage folks who want to be kept in the loop about our project, the changes that are happening, and all of the new developments via those platforms that we provide and have created for the project duration.
Got it. Okay, perfect. Next question is, how are Pegasus and TxDOT ensuring minimum impact to the neighbors of the Garland batch plant staging site?
I'll field that question, Mark. The batch plant that we worked with City of Garland for a site plan on that location, we positioned the plant on the property as far away from residents as we possibly could. We're well over 1,000 feet from the nearest resident, complying with all the TCQ rules. We maintain the site with sweeping the site and watering the roads to keep the dust down. And we work with the City of Garland on our night hours to limit the noise coming from the site.
Got it. Okay. And the final question I have for TxDOT and Pegasus is Martin Marietta or any other subcontractor planning to request a temporary batch plant in the project right of way? And how will the community be engaged in that process?
So no other subcontractors on the project will be leading the initiative to permit plants on our site. All the plants on the site will be through Pegasus Link Constructors. The previous Martin Marietta plant and the Austin asphalt plant were not associated with our project at all.
Okay, perfect. Well, Diane, thank you and your team for those answering those questions. I think what I'll do now is I'll quickly move to our council member who has a couple of questions queued up for her. Councilmember Blackman, one of the first questions is, and I think you've kind of answered this with your closing comments, but I'll go ahead and reiterate, how is the city ensuring that its departments operate under the goals of the new CCAP when approving new construction projects and zoning applications?
So zoning and construction, they do go through our OEQ, which is Office of Environmental Quality, that is overseeing the CCAP. And they work with that office to ensure that we are following what has been set forth in that document as far as building codes and building like structures. We are following the latest, I guess, practices. There is a green building code that we do have. And so the city is committed to making sure that we do follow the document that we've adopted plus green building codes.
Okay, good. And is the city considering revising its zoning notification process for industrial applications to include a greater number of nearby residential properties?
So we do have a zoning as we, the exercise that we went through this past spring, and it is reviewed every so often. And it was reviewed this past, I guess, January, February. And let me go inside. This is like, I can hear. And so what was happening, hold on.
Take your time.
Cicadas are horrible. Okay, I've just popped into my bedroom. So what we, so the notification process is outlined in our, well, it's governed a little bit by the state as far as what the notification, we do extend it more. I believe was 200 by state. We do 500 feet. And And so we do review it, and it was reviewed a while back. It will be reviewed again soon. So there's nothing happening in the next near future. However, I did get from, if you're on the early notification form or the early notification email distribution list, you get everything that comes through the city. So if you have that, that is the best way to, because I get those, I sign up and get them, and I get them once a week. That is the best thing to do, is to get on that. And if you're not on it, anybody can be on it. And you need to send an email to Liliana.Lopez, Liliana.Lopez, Lopez at DallasCityHall.com. And then there's also a link that you can look at, that's the zoning case tracker. So you can see every case coming through the City Hall zoning case. And it's development.data.dallascityhall.com.zoning. So that is where it is with the, we really do try to use the technology platforms and the tools to make sure that homeowners are notified. We place placards on the street so as people are moving. But if you're outside of that zone, it is, there hasn't been any discussion to create a broader zone. Just get on these email lists.
Got it. Okay, perfect. Councilmember, do you know will the city be making changes to its process for approval of temporary concrete batch plants and in the public right of way, so that it includes a public notification or a public input opportunity?
At this point, temporary batch plants are still at the discretion of the city, but they do look at 1,000 feet from the temporary batch plant. And the batch plant's about a 6 to 1 year period, so it's not permanent. And they look at 1,000 feet from the spot that's been requested. And they go and they look at the compatibility. I will tell you that staff, they're very politically savvy. And the last thing they want is to put something in a place that is going to cause harm. And then plus politically cause harm, because then it becomes a storm, if you will. So there's not a notification process, because it's only for 6 months to 12 to a year. So there's not a notification process, but there is a due diligence review, and they'll monitor it. And I do think that I've never had a temporary batch plant come through, and I've only been in here a year, but even in my time at City Hall. So I haven't seen any of those, but I would, but it doesn't mean it does happen. But there's right now nothing that would constitute a new notification, because it is not changing zoning, and it is a 6 to 12 month period.
Got it. Okay. And that kind of piggybacks into the concerns about air pollution and how air pollution disproportionately impacts minority neighborhoods.
It does.
What zoning changes are being proposed to stop polluting minority neighborhoods, these communities in Dallas that are oftentimes disproportionately impacted?
So a lot of the zoning that we see across the city that is in minority neighborhoods in our most vulnerable communities, those were done, and like this one was done in the 50s when it was the country, right? I mean, in the 50s when this PD was created. And so there wasn't a lot of residential. And one thing I've asked the city manager as we're going through a planning exercise is to look at these old PDs that don't make sense to what is happening around it, and to see how we make them more compatible with what's really happening there. And so what is happening when you look at Joppy, when you look at West Dallas, is that those were once industrial areas. And what we're doing, and in order to operate an industrial, even in this in any environment, even if you have the zoning, is you have to come before the council and get a SUP, a special use permit, which is what it was attached to this batch plant. And so what we have to do is look at, and what the council does do is look at, is this, and I will tell you, we denied this one, and there was one that went through in District 6. And I asked the representative there, and he says, no, it's in an it's truly an industrial part that is cut off for neighborhoods. It's okay to be there. But there are some that have been denied because the neighborhood is built up around it and it doesn't make sense. So the SUP process, and where we have to evaluate it every year, is the best way to make sure that this plot of land is compatible with what the rest of that community has. And I mean, Joppy there was one that didn't pass in Joppy probably a couple of years ago. So the council is committed to making sure that communities of color are not just kind of thrown upon anymore. And it is being discussed by everybody. It's not just a Southern thing or a Northern thing. It's a discussion point that it's equity. You know, it's equity. This is what people should not be forced to live in a neighborhood where they can't breathe. And that's what we're kind of dealing with Shingle Mountain. Is we're working. Trust me, we are working to clean it up because people are getting sick. And then, you know, you hear this, well, we'll just put something else that you know is related to the landfill down the street. And it's like, no, don't just put something there because it's the easy way to do it. Let's fix it and make it right. And I think you're seeing more council members, and thanks to the community at large saying, no, we need a united city and not a divided city. And that helps us make that job easier.
That's great. Thank you. That's really insightful. Thank you for the detail. Really appreciate it. One last question to you, Councilmember, before we move on to State Representative Eve, as well as the Dallas County Commissioner. And that's, do you have any, can you speak a little bit about the future industrial applications in the zoning districts close to residential neighborhoods in District 9? Any information you have?
Right now, there's none.
Oh, good. Okay.
Yeah, but there is a zoning case at Charles Gill Elementary, but it's not a industrial. They're just getting they're trying to get rid of some portables and a new gym, storm shelter gym. So that's really District 9 does not have a lot of zoning cases, and then we don't. And that one that came up was the industrial one, and it is an opportunity zone, and so that's the uniqueness of it. So what we do have a little working group that's trying to get that moving, because it's a perfect, if only like there was a trail where that railroad is, or DART would come right through there, it would be perfect. But it is an opportunity zone, and so we're trying to figure out how that moves forward. Got it. Perfect.
Well, once again, thank you for the information, Councilmember. Really appreciate it.
Sure.
So back to, we have a few more questions, and then we'll close it for the evening. Back to State Representative Neve, as well as Dr. Daniel. And you can both answer this, or whoever you think is the most appropriate to answer these questions. The first one is regarding air quality, a little bit of what we just spoke about with Councilmember Blackman. There's research that shows a link between poor air quality and an increase in the impact the coronavirus has. What's being done at the city council or city, county, state levels to improve air quality in light of the pandemic that's hit us so hard this year? Any thoughts on that?
Sure. And I'll share a few comments on that. And I'll say first, when the pandemic first hit us, and there was a decrease in transportation, we actually saw that our environment started clearing up and being a lot healthier and better. Rivers were running clear. We saw radars where the smog had significantly decreased, but now as transportation is starting to increase, we know that there's a correlation between individuals who have lung problems or health conditions, those underlying health conditions. You're more likely to have more health complications if you contract COVID. So for us, one of the things that we're trying to make sure that we do is get access to healthcare and testing in our area. Right now at Eastfield, there is a free testing site. There's drive-through and walk-up testing for anybody that needs it. Please use it. Please help us spread the word. The more that it's used, the longer we're likely to have that resource here in our area. And so we want folks to know about that. But I think in general, we need a change in the laws and generally statewide and nationally when it comes to our environment and air quality. But right now we want to make sure that people have all of the tools at their fingertips, especially with respect to testing for COVID. And the numbers are going down. So for those of you wearing a mask, thank you so much. Please continue to do so. We will get out of this stronger and better than ever. And the trajectory is on a downward trend. And so we just want to keep it going that way so that our economy can get back to where it was and be better than it was before. So thank y'all.
Terrific. Thank you. Thank you. Dr. Daniel, do you have anything to add?
I did want to add a couple of different things. Dr. Robert Haley at UT Southwestern for years has done a lot of work that does connect air quality with health. Asthma is one of the ones that come to mind first of all, and has been noted with COVID being more prevalent in people who have, I think 70% of the people had underlying conditions before they got COVID. So that testing obviously is going on. And it looks as if the vaccine should be relatively close by. Regarding just the conditions of health with pollution, air, water, the state's involvement in it, I think is something that I, along with the county, is really looking forward to. In the legislative session, I think 2 ago, the emissions control connection with local government was stopped, which is, as you've already said, when COVID hit, it became very obvious that the less traffic, the better the air quality is. So there's the continual contact. And I know that with good Representative Victoria to talk about what we can be seeing in the legislative session coming up about the variety of types of relationships that and activities that can be going on to make improvements on that. We're certainly not done yet in that area.
Good. That's good to hear. And we definitely we look forward to hearing more from the legislative session as to what ways in which local, county, and state entities are working to improve the regional air quality in Dallas and in Texas in general. So we really appreciate it.
I did want to note too that right now in this kind of interim period, a group of cities, county, university, UTD have joined together to make air quality monitors in order to continue to collect the data that had been stopped also. And it's just where the community has said, no, this is totally unacceptable, that we must continue to attack this particular element in our neighborhoods that affects all of us health-wise.
Yeah, and I'll just add, if anybody has ideas or if you're seeing issues with the law, I mean, we have a list of things that we're looking at, but certainly don't hesitate to reach out to us. I think that's how we come up with a lot of the legislation, is from the discussions that we have with our neighbors and other stakeholders. So the legislative session begins in January, but now is when we're doing all of our due diligence, working on the language and things like that. So please don't hesitate to connect with our office.
You'll be hearing from the city of Dallas.
Every time we're happy to work together.
And given with the transportation, what we did find is more desire to have alternative means of transportation. So we are investing in our bike structure. We did our budget last night, and it was pretty overwhelming that we want to invest in our infrastructure in the form of bike lanes. And so bike lanes aren't for recreation anymore. We found they're a way for individuals to get to work. And so, which hopefully, as we know, is a direct, getting people off the streets and in, out of their cars does help our environment and the air quality.
Perfect. Well, thank you all for that informative dialogue. I really appreciate it. I think we have time for a couple more questions. We're a little over, but I wanted to get a couple of questions out to the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality, and then there was one I think important follow-up question to TxDOT. One question to Diane and her team, real quick before we move to the Texas Commission. There was a question from someone out in the neighborhood of where exactly the location of the plant is in the Mesquite area. Do you have any information that you could follow on with that, with what we spoke about earlier? And how close is that to the neighborhoods? That would be to Diane. Diane?
Yeah, hi Mark, this is Shad at Pegasus Link.
Yes.
They're currently looking in Mesquite. The location we have submitted to the TCQ is off of Northwest Drive and the eastbound frontage road. And the current closest residence is across the highway, well over 800 so feet away from property there. There is a Christian care center across the road, but that's zoned commercial.
Got it. Perfect. Thanks, Chad. Really appreciate it. So now to Alyssa and Beryl, two questions, and then we'll wrap up. The first question is regarding air quality. I think it's really important for this group. Where are the nearest air quality monitoring stations to this project site? And what are the existing air quality issues in the area? And how you think this will impact the air quality?
Okay, we have Julie Eldridge, who's the ambient monitoring section manager with us, and so she can take that question.
Julie, all you.
Hello, everybody. Hopefully y'all can hear me okay. So we, the address I was given for what this question was referring to was on Shiloh Road. So hopefully that is the correct location. If not, I can provide some updated information. But the closest particulate monitors we have, again, I'm assuming that's the most of interest because of the concrete batch plants. We have one at our convention center site, which is about 10 miles from that location. And that it has both PM 2.5 and PM 10 monitoring. And then we also have about 12 miles away at our Dallas Hinton site, we have PM 2.5 monitoring, including both mass and PM 2.5 speciation, where we actually analyze the filter for metals and other parameters. We do, in terms of air quality issues, the DFW area is meeting the federal standards for PM 2.5. The 24-hour standard is 12 micrograms per meter cubed, and the 2019 design value is 9.2. So we are below that federal standard and meeting the federal standards in that area. In terms of what air quality issues there are, we do exceed both the 2015 and 2008 ozone standard in the DFW area.
Thank you, Julie. Appreciate it.
And we do have Susan Alvarez from OEQ here at City of Dallas, because I asked that same question because East Dallas seems to not have a one that's right, local, so to speak. And there was a reason for it. So could I get Susan Alvarez? But she is, I think, just a panel, not a panelist, but she's listening in.
Oh, she is. Let's see. I think I'm going to open up her microphone now to see if we can get her on. Susan, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
So the City of Dallas actually contracts with the TCEQ to do the local air quality monitoring. And so I provided Ms. Blackman some information earlier. I gave her the map. There's actually another site up off of LBJ, the Dallas LBJ site. The other thing that we looked at, and it kind of explains why there aren't a lot of monitors in East Dallas, is that the dominant wind patterns over time in Dallas are north-south or south to north. There's not a lot of east-west wind. And so folks in the east the emissions from this project will most likely go north or south rather than east-west. And so we would anticipate, as long as everybody's compliant with all the rules on their equipment, we would anticipate minimal impacts because of the dominant wind patterns, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and so when you look at the map and you see the positions of the monitors, you're like, there is a hole in East Dallas of a lack of monitors. And so that's why I asked the question is, do we need a monitor? And they said the wind patterns, it really doesn't make sense. So if somebody says, well, why don't we have one in East Dallas? Because I think she said 10 miles and whatnot, that is the reason.
Got it.
Is that acceptable?
I put on during, I think, Suze, do you remember that meeting? And I said, could you put it on your work plan to see if we could get one? And it was
we actually, so we are working with the TCEQ for additional monitors. We're looking at one in the Joppy area because of some downwind potential impacts to that area. We have it on our work plan to look at additional monitoring in this. It is a gap area in East Dallas. I think the next monitor over is over almost in, looks like Greenville or Tyler. So they're pretty far east. So we are looking at that. The thing that's kind of important to realize or recognize is that those monitors are for regional compliance. They're not necessarily used for day-to-day neighborhood impacts. And so one of the other things that we're looking at as part of the CCAP is obtaining the air quality sensors that are non-regulatory to help us with assessing more localized impacts. And so that's something we're kind of excited about doing as part of our climate plan, particularly because of the public health impacts, or potential public health impacts, I guess I should say.
Thank you, Susan.
Got it. Thank you, Susan. Really appreciate it. Final question to TCEQ, and then we'll hand it back over to Catherine. How are permit holders held accountable, and what kind of reporting does TCEQ require of them? I'll let Alyssa determine who answers that question.
Okay, I'll take that one. The TCEQ addresses all complaints, and for sites located within the city limits of Dallas, air-related issues are actually addressed by the City of Dallas Local Air Program. When a complaint is received, a field investigation may be conducted to address complaints about issues within the jurisdiction of the TCEQ. The investigators may perform surveys in the areas surrounding the complainant, depending on the nature of the complaint, and perform an investigation of the alleged problem at the source. In addition, a general compliance investigation may be initiated. As stated earlier, compliance investigations are scheduled based on multiple factors. If a facility has a documented history of continued noncompliance, regularly scheduled or reconnaissance investigations may be initiated for those. If a violation is documented, criteria are used to determine the level of the violation based on its potential impact to health and the environment. If a violation is referred for enforcement action, it may result in penalties and technical requirements to correct the violation. For violations that are not referred for enforcement action, the company is given an opportunity to correct the violation. And then to answer the second part of the question, for facilities authorized by the Air Quality Standard Permit for concrete batch plants, there are no periodic reporting requirements. In the event of a reportable emissions event, the facility would generally be required to report the event to the TCEQ within 24 hours of discovery, and emission events are by definition unauthorized. Emission event reports are evaluated by TCEQ staff to determine if an affirmative defense is applicable or if enforcement action is appropriate. And one thing I want to add, because I keep talking about the complaints, is everyone needs to know how to file a complaint with the TCEQ. We do have a TCEQ environmental complaint hotline, and that is 1-888-777-3186. And citizens can also file a complaint online through the TCEQ's website.
Perfect. Thank you for the information, Alyssa. Really appreciate it. I think that wraps up the Q&A session. We have some other questions that we just couldn't get to. The chat was quite active as well. So don't worry, we have everybody's email address and information. There's a lot of information that is also provided by council member and TCEQ and TxDOT, and as well as State Representative Navy.
So thank you guys all for joining us tonight. We know you have a lot going on, and especially this time of year is always really busy. So again, thank you all so much. We just want to remind our attendees that if you are a resident of East Dallas, you can join us on our East Dallas Greater Good Facebook group. We post upcoming community events, community topics, things that are of interest to East Dallas. You can also go to our website, eastdallasgreatergood.org, and sign up for emails. You'll get kind of active alerts of what's going on in our community and hot topics. We really appreciate Representative Niave, Commissioner Daniel, Councilmember Blackman. Thank you all very much for your time. Alyssa and Beryl, we appreciate you, and also our friends at Pegasus. Thank you guys, and we will be back in touch with some answers and post those to our Facebook group and our website. Thank you all again. Have a great night.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.
Say bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Cute. Cute.